I'll just kind of discuss them. Just follow along with me on what's going on. If you have any questions, let me know. If you need to fix anything on yours, you can fix them on yours. And then we'll start working through the review. And we'll kind of go from there. So for number 2, this is on practice 3. So waves are sent down a slinky so that 7 wavelengths reach the other side in 2 seconds. The length of the slinky is 10 meters. So the first thing you want to do is just draw what you have. So 7 wavelengths. So I'm going to start at a crest. So down up is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it says the whole thing has a length of 10 meters. And then it wants to know the wavelength. So first thing I need to do is figure out how far is it from one to the next. So how would I do that? How would I figure out how far it is to go from one to the next one? What you got, Sam? You got this. Yeah, so why are you dividing those two numbers? Right, so we know, exactly, we know how far it is. So we know the total distance is 10 meters. And we know the total number of wavelengths is 7. So we want to find just one wavelength. We would divide those two. And we get, was it 1.4 or something like that? 1.4. So there would be one wavelength. So then it wants to know the frequency. So now we need to know how often they happen. So how many waves happen per second. So how would I go about finding that? What you got, Fox?
7 divided by 2.
Good. So we take the total number of waves divided by the total number of seconds. And that would give me 3.5. And then last thing we need is the velocity. So v equals f lambda. So the velocity is what we're solving for. The frequency we just found, 3.5. And the wavelength we found before that, 1.4. And we get 5. Yeah, it depends on how or if you rounded. You may get a slightly different number, but basically you get 5. Uh-huh. Yeah. It's going to be multiple choice, so like there will be some rounding already, but like as long as you find an answer that's close to the one you have, you should feel fairly confident you're in good shape. Yeah. Okay, good. Back page. So why does it make sense that with a higher frequency you would have a shorter wavelength? So the one thing I want to make sure you're clear on, what's the difference between high frequency and low frequency? So high frequency and low frequency are how often the waves happen. So this would be one type of frequency. Let's just say it's high frequency. So a low frequency, the waves would happen less often. Notice I didn't necessarily make them larger. I just made it so that they don't happen as often. So why is it that the wavelength has to be shorter? Well, when you have a high frequency, when they're happening more often, they have to be closer together so you get more of them in one space. Whereas with a low frequency, you get less of them in one space. So they have to be larger and longer and more spread out for a low frequency, and they have to be tighter and more compact for a high frequency. Okay? Number 4. Someone tell me, how do I find frequency? How do I find wavelength? I want to make sure you guys have the right one. Frequency and period. What you got, Sam?
For period, we just have to do the time divided by the loop wavelength.
Good. Period is time divided by wavelengths. Yes. Again, there's not an equation on the test that tells you that. You need to know that. And you don't. It's not that you have to memorize it. You just have to know the definition. The definition of period is number of seconds per wave. Definition of frequency is number of waves per second. Okay? So all you'd have to do is divide those out. So this one is 2.27. And this one is 0.44. All right, number 5 is pretty straightforward. You're just finding the velocity. So it's just frequency times wavelength. So it's just 3,600 times 0.42. So that one's easy enough. For that one, so that one's easy enough. The last one, though, was throwing some people off. So I want to spend just a little bit of time thinking about this one. So has a frequency of 99.5 times 10 to the 6 hertz. Radio wave travels at a speed of 3 times 10 to the 8th. How long would it take, would the wavelength be? So the equation is V equals F lambda, same equation we just looked at. The velocity is the 3 times 10 to the 8th. And the frequency is 99.5 times 10 to the 6th. And then we're solving for wavelength. What threw a lot of people off is these numbers, because these numbers are really large. So all you have to be careful of is just remember that they're just numbers. It's not like, I'm not asking you to do math here. Now, you can put it in your calculator and it'll give you a number, and you can put that in your calculator and it'll give you a number. But that's not really what I'm asking. What I'm really asking is just that you solve out what's being done. And so what's being done is we're multiplying wavelength in this number here, and what we need is just the wavelength. So we're going to divide that to both sides. Okay? And then you want to put this in your calculator. So, if you're having trouble putting in your calculator, here's my suggestion. My suggestion is put everything in parentheses. So, I got to do 3 times 10 to the 8th divided by 99.5 times 10 to the 6th. So, I would put it in like this. Parentheses, 3 times 10 power 8 in parentheses. So there's my first number. Divided by parentheses 99.5 times 10 power 6 in parentheses equals, and there's my number, 3.02, we'll call it, for the wavelength. Okay, so it's just a matter of just working through the things. As I mentioned, you are going to see some problems on the quiz, but it is going to be multiple choice. You're going to see a question like this. You're going to see a V equals F lambda question. You're going to see a wavelength period, frequency period question. Okay, you might even see a question that looks something like this, where you got to find different parts. Just make sure that you're being careful on that, and you should be in good shape. Okay, and I'm not anticipating this being a long quiz. I'm not anticipating it being a super difficult one, but I do want to make sure to go through things. So, does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, awesome. Let's jump to the review guide. And here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to work through and try to answer the questions. We'll do them a little bit at a time. You're just going to work at your table. So you have your partner bounce questions off and ideas off and that sort of thing. I'll be able to help you in that sort of thing too. What we'll do is we'll go through one at a time. And once we've done that,